And we are back, and Peanut Gallery.
My wine tasted like candy corn for a minute.
Okay. I said Halloween, and now you taste candy corn. Anyway, let's talk about the G1.
I hate candy corn.
So G1 Climax. What is the history? What are some interesting little nitpicky facts about this? So the G1 Climax origins comes from a tournament from the Japanese Wrestling Association's World Big League that started in 1959 and ended in 1972. This was a single elimination tournament to determine the best in the world, and that is actually what they said. They had people from multiple promotions. Peanut Gallery is going to go puke, so that should be interesting. So from there was a 2-year hiatus where the World League was debuted by Antonio Inoki in 1974, and it ended in 1977, where it was replaced by the MSG League starting in 1978 and went to 1982. And this is kind of when Hogan won the IWGP champion, because from 1982 to 1991, it was called the MJP League or the IWGP League. And this is when the heavyweight champion was introduced, because that was the original prize. Did you go and puke?
No, I peed.
Oh, okay. So
I urinated.
So the origins
Not that they need to know, but
right. The origins of this was the IWGP League, which started in 1983. The first winner was Hulk Hogan, who won the original IWGP Heavyweight Champion.
Yes, we talked about that a couple weeks ago.
Yes, we did. If you haven't seen that, go ahead and see it. So from there, it was basically like the champion was renewed per tournament. Antonio Inoki, who signed on, won it the most times with 7 with the IWGP League. From there, it transferred into the G1 Climax in 1991, the winner being Masahiro Chono. Chono is also the first person to win it 2 consecutive years. He won in 1991 and 1992. From there, he won it 3 more times. To this day, he has won more G1 Climax tournaments than anyone else, with a record of 5. But he was the first one to win it consecutively. Hiroki Tenzan, for some reason my thing spelled it incorrectly, had 3 reigns, and he was the second person to win it twice, in 2003 and 2004, and then he won it in 2006. Also, still to this day, Tenzan has had the most appearances in the G1 Climax with a record 21 times. He hasn't shown up in a while more because he's in his mid-50s now. So obviously there is more to that. The longest match in G1 Climax history was the finals of the 2018 G1 Climax between Kota Ibushi and Hiroshi Tanahashi, which lasted about 35 minutes. It was an amazing match. Go ahead and watch it. It was really good. On the flip end of the coin, the shortest match in the G1 Climax was Hiroki Goto and Toru Yano, which lasted 18 seconds.
Nice.
Which is crazy. Right now, there have been 1,554 matches in the G1, not including the finals this year. So there's 1,555 G1 Climax matches since 1991. Yuji Nagata, Hiroshi Tanahashi, and Tenzan had the most consecutive entries in the G1 Climax at 19.
Nice.
So that's kind of cool. Hiroshi Tanahashi had wrestled 140 matches in the G1, not including this year's, and won 82 of them. He won the tournament in 2007, 2015, and 2018. Kazuchi Okada had the longest winning streak in the G1 Climax at 12. This was in 2016 when he was in his record-breaking 2-year IWGP Heavyweight Championship reign. In the 2019 G1 Climax opener, it held in Dallas, Texas, in the American Airlines Center. That was the first time ever that the G1 Climax was held outside of Japan.
Obviously, it didn't happen this year
Yes.
due to Rona, but
Right.
it should happen probably next year, too.
Right.
If, as long as everything opens back up.
Right. So, in the New Japan Pro Wrestling official lineage of the G1 Climax, this tournament started with the IWGP League, which Hogan won in 1983. Now, people speculate between the Japanese Wrestling Association's contributions to this reign. Obviously, the same thing with the two different versions of the IWGP Heavyweight Champion. Once again, this is kind of where Japan kind of falls short of this.
Right.
There have been 21 G1 Climax matches that have won 5 stars or over by Dave Meltzer.
Nice.
3 of them this year, which are Shingo Takagi and Will Ospreay, Kota Ibushi and Minoru Suzuki, and Kazuchika Okada and Shingo Takagi. With the final 2 having more than 5 stars at 5.25.
Right.
We will be talking about the winner of this year's Climax, but this is kind of at least a brief history, a synopsis of the G1 Climax.
Nice.
Now, generally, this entire tournament happens in the summer. And with Masahiro Chono's actual nickname being Mr. August. And that is because this thing starts in late July going into August.
That's awesome.
Well, because Chono won it more times than anybody.
Right.
He put in the most work. And also, the G1 Climax is a predecessor to what we know as of the future of New Japan.
Right.
So with
that's when people really break out as new stars.
Yes, this is when Hiroshi Tanahashi really broke out, because when he first won it in 2007, he beat Masahiro Chono.
Right.
Obviously. So, and that's also insane.
Right. I mean,
the only person I looked and looked and looked, and I think there was no person who has won the G1 Climax as heavyweight champion. There have been people who went to the finals, but I could not find somebody who did. Maybe I'm terrible
the
at
G1
fact
Climaxes, you mean like whoever wins the G1 Climax and goes on, only one person has won the heavyweight champion at Wrestle Kingdom.
Yes.
That's what was meant by it. So it's like someone wins a Royal Rumble and goes to WrestleMania to face the world champion, but only one person has been able to successfully defeat the world champion at Tokyo Dome after winning the G1 Climax, which we saw last year as well when
Kota Ibushi won it last year, and he lost both matches in the double gold dash.
Right. And then he wins again this year. Now, is he going to go? Is he going to actually be one of the few that win? Who knows? And history tells us that probably not, because that's just the way that it is.
And these are the straight up statistics.
Right.
During the dark ages of New Japan, this is when Tenzan won, because Tenzan became popular still during the height of this, but he still won it in half of the crowd. So between 2002 and 2003, it was half crowd attendance from the previous year. So that's a crazy drop. And this is when the dark ages of New Japan happened. Generally, the winner was like the top draw, but at the same time, during the dark ages, it wasn't.
Right.
But, there have been great moments. In 1991, there was the famous moment when Chono won.
Right.
And at this point, the chairs in the audience had like a little velvet padding.
Right.
And it's called the padding throw-in, where everyone took the padding off and threw it into the ring. I think it was called like Velvet Rain too,
Right.
Which I think is really cool. There have been great moments in the G1, and there have been 2 different versions. Obviously, we know about the current Red Robin version,
Right.
where everybody faces everybody, and whoever has the most points, except for this year, but I'll bitch about that later, whoever wins the most points gets to go on to the finals.
Right.
But then, not a lot of people know this, but there was a weird time when there was a single elimination tournament. And then there was one year where the 2 were just chosen, and that was in 1993. And that was when, once again, Messenger Eternal won. Where they were just chosen.
Right.
Now, the G1 is such a... This is like the pinnacle of tournaments.
Yeah.
Where you learn the most about who you're actually going with and what you're...
It's not like other tournaments. This is akin to the Royal Rumble match in terms of its importance.
Except a lot more extended,
Right.
and a lot of that.
So, speaking of which, when we come back from the break, we're going to go through this year's G1 finals, which we just stopped watching not too long ago.
Yes.
And we shall be right back.
Yes.